When people think of cartoons, they tend to associate them with humour. However, sometimes shows can be so incredibly well written that they're able to make people feel emotions besides happiness. Futurama is one such example. Some may see it as a wacky sci-fi show, but some episodes are so sad that they're enough to move people to tears. I'm counting down the top 5 saddest Futurama episodes which will make you cry. At number 5, we have the late Philip J. Fry. After standing up Leela on her birthday, Fry promises to take her to a romantic dinner. He even blows off Hedonism Bot's bachelor party. However, due to his tardiness to work that day, the professor makes him stay late to test his forwards time machine. Fry decides to record the birthday card message in the machine in order to save time. They only intend to go forward by 1 minute, but the professor slips and sends them 7,000 years into the future, the greeting card slipping out of the screen. Leela ends up being stood up again, in the cavern on the green, only to see on TV that Hedonism Bot's party had a catastrophic reactor meltdown, killing all but Hedonism Bot. Leela's frustrated, yet distraught, assuming that Fry died. In the year 10,000, everything looks bleak. They don't know what to do, until the professor realises they can just keep going forwards until they find someone who's invented backwards time travel. They eventually discover a time when they have, which is very appealing in many ways, but Bender's frustration that they skipped the time period he likes results in him pulling the lever again and shooting them far into the future. They arrive at the year 1 billion, where the Earth is burnt to a crisp. Back in 3050, Planet Express is booming, with Leela now in charge. Out of the blue, she gets hit by a greeting card. Upon watching it, she discovers Fry didn't stand her up to see strippers, and cared for her after all. Leela's racked with immense guilt for blaming him this whole time, so goes for a stroll. She discovers Cavern on the Green, now run down and deserted. Due to its formation being from water dripping through pores in the ceiling over millions of years, she shoots it tactically in order for a message to form. Fry discovers this in the year 1 billion. Our time together was short, but it was the best time of my life. Fry gets emotional and accepts his inevitable death. He, Bender, and the professor decide to watch the universe end, only for there to be a second Big Bang. The universe created is exactly the same as the last. They fast forward through time, miss the year again, so go round another time, crushing their initial selves that were going to get in the machine. Fry rushes off to dinner with Leela, making it on time for once. We're left with Fry and Leela staring up at the stars, Leela telling Fry, "What I'll remember is our time together." In addition to this being an incredible episode in general, especially for the later seasons, the sheer poignancy emphasises how strong the writing is. We feel so deeply for Fry and Leela in this timeline, with Leela's emptiness without Fry and her message for him being incredibly heartfelt for the viewer to watch. At number 4, we have Meanwhile. This was the very last episode of the show. Well, actually, it seems not, but for the sake of this video, let's say it is. The crew return to the moon, where their very first delivery was, to visit Luna Park. They ride the Mecha Hexadecapus, but Bender throws up nuts and bolts, getting them lodged in the machine. Leela is flung out of the dome, and Fry is distraught. She manages to survive, but Fry is very shaken up by the situation. He concludes that he couldn't imagine his life without Leela, so decides to ask her to marry him. Later on, the professor proceeds to demonstrate his new invention, a time button. It sends you back in time by 10 seconds, but takes 10 seconds to recharge. Meaning, if something bad happens, you can press the button to revert it and prevent the event. The only way to be unaffected is by being next to the button, or being in a time shelter. Fry and Bender use this to steal lots of diamonds without the knowledge of the shop owner, and Fry also prevents Leela's hand being chopped off by a clam. He proposes to her, but says not to answer yet, and to meet him at the top of the Vampire State Building at 6:30 precisely, if she accepts. He waits there for her, but when she doesn't show, he sees no point in living, so jumps off the building. As he falls, he sees Leela walking in, and is shocked that she's so late. He falls past the clock on the building, and it says 6:25. What he forgot to process is that every time he used the button, he was unaffected, including his wristwatch, meaning his watch was over half an hour fast. Upon this realization, he presses the time button to wind up back on the roof, but unfortunately, he'd been falling for more than 10 seconds. He keeps pressing the button every time it turns green, then falling for 10 seconds. The professor, being in the time shelter at the time, notices this repeated loop, so gets the rest of the crew to join him. He explains that because they're in the shelter, if they leave and the button's pressed less than 10 seconds later, the anti-chronotons wouldn't know where to send them back to. Because of this, they scuttle in the shelter and stop every 10 seconds so they're not shredded across the space-time continuum. They arrive at the building and call out to Fry, but this distracts him, making him let go of the button. He finally lands and gets smushed on the ground. The professor leaves the shelter to examine him, when Leela realizes she can press the button to save him. The professor gets shredded up, and Fry continues to fall. Bender runs out underneath Fry, and Hermes, Amy, and Zoidberg crash into him to activate his airbag. Fry finally lands safely, but breaks the button in the process. Everything besides himself and Leela freezes in position. The two of them are in awe of everything around them. Anything is theirs for the taking. Fry asks Leela to marry him again, so they collect up their frozen loved ones and place them in the pews of the church. They marry and then go on their incredibly long honeymoon. They travel the world as they grow old together, taking in the famous sights, including walking across oceans. They finally return to the top of the vampire state, where Fry reads the toast he was due to read all those years ago. To us, if I could make one moment last forever, this is the one I would choose. Just after, a weird glimmer flashes past them and opens up. The professor is revealed, as he didn't actually die when Leela pressed the button. He takes the broken button from Fry and fixes it, modding it to take them back to the time before the professor conceived of it. If he presses it, none of them will have any memory of this whole experience. Fry says to Leela, "What do you say? Want to go round again?" Leela does, and they embrace. The professor presses the button, and credits roll. The sheer love Leela and Fry have for each other, partnered with the sadness that the series is over, makes for a truly tear-jerking episode. At number 3, we have Luck of the Fryrish. In this episode, we get an insight into Fry's childhood. His older brother, Yancey, is constantly jealous of him, stealing his things like his toy rocket and breakdance routine. When the two of them are playing basketball, Fry discovers a 7-leaf clover, which grants him incredible luck, causing Yancey to become even more envious. In the present day, Fry is completely fed up of his bad luck. He articulates that he wishes he still had his 7-leaf clover, and Zoidberg suggests that it may be in the hiding place Fry left it in. So Fry, Leela, and Bender return to the underground ruins of Old New York in search of it. They finally find Fry's old house, so go down to the bunker. Fry had hidden it in a record of the Breakfast Club soundtrack, thinking no one would ever look in there. However, it's nowhere to be seen. Fry assumes it was his brother Yancey, but begins to accept that his brother must have loved him. At this point, though, they encounter a statue resembling Yancey. In addition, on the lapel is Fry's 7-leaf clover. Fry's certain it's his brother, but the inscription says Philip J. Fry. Yancey had articulated before that he hated his name and wanted to be called Philip, so he clearly stole Fry's name once he disappeared. In addition, the statue says that he was the first man on Mars, a dream Fry had always had. Upon returning to the surface, they watch a video on Philip J. Fry, verifying that this man was incredibly successful in every aspect of his life, carrying out all of Fry's dreams, likely due to the luck of the clover. The video says that Philip was buried with the clover, so the crew set off to go grave robbing. We then see a flashback of Yancey preparing for his wedding. He goes to the basement to take one of Fry's records. Down there, he discovers some of Fry's stuff, including a drawing Fry did of his dream of going into space. Yancey pockets it and looks in the safe. He takes the Breakfast Club soundtrack and also discovers the clover. Fry and the others arrive at the graveyard and make it to Philip's grave. They start digging when Fry knocks off a bit of shrub covering part of the inscription. Back in the past, we see Yancey and his wife with their new baby. His wife asks about names, and Yancey is reluctant to say. He then gives his son a lucky clover which will help him be successful. He says it once belonged to someone very special. Yancey's wife knows what he wants to call his son and says it's okay. Yancey's face lights up and he says, "I'm naming you Philip J. Fry, in honor of my little brother, who I miss every day. I love you, Philip, and I always will." He looks to the wall, where there's a framed picture of Fry's drawing of space. They fade to the present day, where Fry is reading the grave's inscription. "Here lies Philip J. Fry, named for his uncle, to carry on his spirit." Fry is moved and returns the clover. "Don't You Forget About Me" from the Breakfast Club soundtrack plays as they pan out, a perfectly fitting song. This is undoubtedly one of the best episodes of Futurama, and the way they capture the emotions of the characters makes it also one of the saddest. At number 2, we have Leela's homeworld. Leela is named Orphan of the Year by her old orphanarium. The owner tells the story of the night Leela was abandoned on his doorstep, with a note written in an alien language. Leela gives an inspirational speech to the orphans, but later admits to Fry that there was nothing she wanted more than a mum and dad. She believes that somewhere out there, her alien parents are up there looking down on her. Contrary to what she thinks, her parents are actually looking up on her, from the sewers. Sewer mutants are completely despised by normal society, even forbidding them from coming to the surface. So when Bender drops an excess of waste down there, the mutants decide to punish him, Fry and Leela by dangling them above the sewer water. When they touch this water, they too will mutate and become as hideous as the others. However, 2 cloaked figures recognize Leela and help the 3 escape. They hide in someone's house, only to discover dozens of pictures of Leela on the wall. They also have everything personal she's flushed down the toilet. The mutants then pardon them because of the cloaked figure's influence, but Leela can't stand not finding out the truth, so dives into the sewer water. Miraculously, she doesn't mutate at all. As it turns out, Leela is a mutant herself. She was born down in the sewers, her only mutation being that she had one eye. Her parents couldn't bear that she was so normal, yet would still be forced to live the horrible, degrading life of a mutant. They take her to the surface and put her on the doorstep of an orphanarium. Although mutants are looked down upon, aliens aren't, so her mum, being a specialist in alien languages, writes a message to convince them she isn't a mutant. Her dad also gives her a bracelet so that they'll always be with her, even though she'll never see or talk to them. Through their shame and selflessness, they intend to never reveal their identity to her, so she can live a normal life. Leela, being unaware of all this, chases the cloaked figures down and confronts them. She accuses them of robbing her parents of a bracelet that matched hers, and then comes to the conclusion that they killed them. Still deeply ashamed, they agree to this being the case, as they'd much rather Leela believe this than the truth. They hold hands as they prepare to die for the sake of their daughter, but Fry falls through the ceiling just in time. He reveals that they couldn't translate the alien message, but the note was written on recycled toilet paper, paper which was used predominantly in the sewers. He pulls down their hoods, and the family have a heavily emotional reconciliation. Leela's parents are relieved that she doesn't hate them, despite being the grotesque monsters they are. We're then left with a montage of Leela's parents helping the unsuspecting Leela through gratings as she grows up, making sure they're still there for her, even though they can't be. The selflessness of Leela's parents is truly tear-jerking, as their daughter clearly means the world to them. At number 1, we have Jurassic Bark. Fry and Bender intend to enter a magic show, and whilst practicing, Fry sees that they've opened a museum exhibit based on pizzerias in his day. They go, and he realises that it was Panucci's itself, where Fry worked before he got frozen. He looks at the display, suddenly noticing a fossilization of his old dog, Seymour. Fry met Seymour as a scrawny, underfed mutt, and nursed him back to health by feeding him. They quickly became best friends. In the 31st century, Fry discovers that because of the way Seymour was fossilized, the professor can extract the core and clone him. Fry protests at the museum in order to get his dog back, and they eventually comply. He buys Seymour toys and builds him a house in preparation, but this results in him not giving any attention to Bender. When the professor finally has the cloning machine working, he explains that they need to harness the power of molten lava from the Earth's core. Bender arrives, incredibly upset that Fry missed their magic show performance. Fry's unremorseful, so out of sheer jealousy, Bender chucks Seymour into the lava pit. Fry is hysterical, but the professor gives hope that Seymour may still be preserved due to the nature of dolomite. We then learn that on New Year's Day, Seymour is extremely concerned that Fry didn't return for him as usual. He searches all over, eventually finding the pizza Fry delivered outside the cryogenic lab. He goes in and yips at the freezer, causing Fry's parents to be called in and pick him up. They're ill from bad bologna, and so out of it that they're fully oblivious to Fry in the freezer. They pull Seymour away, insisting that he helps them find Fry. In the present, Bender sees just how much Fry cares for his dog, so he decides to risk his life by jumping into the lava to save him. Fry's concerned that he just lost his two best friends, but Bender saves the day by retrieving Seymour. They put him under the extracting drill and start boring into him. Some initial data comes up, with the Latin name and age of death. The professor is impressed that Seymour made it to the ripe old age of 15, but Fry has other feelings. He realizes that he was only with Seymour for a couple of years, so the dog would have lived a long, full life after he was frozen, surely forgetting about him. Fry smashes the machine, deciding not to go through with the cloning. We are filled with melancholy, as we see that in fact, Seymour didn't forget Fry for as long as he lived. He sat on the curb outside Panucci's, where he usually did, waiting sadly yet expectantly. I Will Wait for You plays, and we see the seasons changing, along with Seymour getting older and more withered. He stays there every single day for 12 years, eagerly awaiting Fry's return, until eventually his body can't go on any longer, and he puts his head down to finally rest. Especially for dog lovers, this could well be the saddest 1 minute in cartoon history. The writers crafted this episode perfectly, making us feel so deeply despite not knowing about Seymour 25 minutes beforehand. It's utterly beyond me that this lost out on an Emmy to 3 Gays of the Condo. I'm sure my description can't do Jurassic Park justice, so I suggest at the very least you watch the final scene on YouTube. What did you think of my ranking? This list was by no means exhaustive, but I thought I would cap it at the top 5 saddest ones. I highly suggest you give all of these a watch, if not the whole show. Like and subscribe to let me know if this is the kind of content you want to see, and if you enjoy cartoons, definitely check out my other videos, as I make my own animations and would be so appreciative if you could help me kickstart what I love doing. In any case, thank you for watching.